The sun was barely peeking over the distant Texas hills when the first truck appeared on the dirt road. Its headlights cut through the morning mist, casting an eerie glow over the quiet farmland. Inside the modest wooden farmhouse, John Reyes was already awake, sipping black coffee at the kitchen table. He had the posture of a man who never truly stopped being a soldier, straight back, eyes scanning the horizon, always listening for what others would never hear. To most of the locals, John was a quiet, solitary man in his late 50s who lived off his crops and cattle. They didn't know his past. They didn't know that he wasn't just a veteran, he was the most decorated and deadly Delta Force commander in U.S. history. And they certainly didn't know that the kind of war he had fought was nothing like the one about to come to his doorstep. The trucks kept coming, 3, then 4, then 6 in total, engines growling, tires spitting up dust. The insignia spray-painted crudely on their doors was unmistakable, the black scorpion emblem of Los Dagas, one of the most ruthless Mexican cartels. They'd crossed the border before sunrise, moving like predators who thought they owned the land. What they didn't know was that they'd just stepped onto the wrong man's property. John didn't panic. Panic was for people who didn't know what to do. He calmly set his coffee mug down, walked to the old wooden cabinet in the corner, and opened it. Inside was a collection of rifles, shotguns, and sidearms, each maintained with surgical precision. But John didn't touch them yet. He knew this wasn't just about fighting, this was about sending a message. The cartels had been creeping into the area for months, taking over ranches, forcing farmers to grow their crops for cartel profit, using intimidation, violence, and murder. John had heard whispers from neighbors about missing livestock, burned barns, and even people disappearing. But he had stayed out of it, until now. Last week, they had killed an old man down the road for refusing to give up his land. And now, they were here. A loud voice, thick with arrogance, called out in Spanish from the lead truck. "Viejo! This land is ours now. Get out before you get hurt." John stepped out onto his porch, the wooden boards creaking beneath his boots. His face was calm, almost too calm. He looked at them the way a predator looks at prey before the strike. "You boys picked the wrong farm," he said quietly. They laughed. One of them stepped forward, his rifle hanging loose at his side. "Old man, you don't know who we are." John's lips curled into something between a smile and a warning. "No. You don't know who I am." What happened next was fast, almost too fast for the human eye. The first man's rifle clattered to the ground before he even realized John had moved. A single, precise strike to his wrist, followed by a swift kick, left him screaming in the dirt. The others froze for a moment, unsure if they'd just seen what they thought they saw. Then, chaos erupted. John didn't just fight, he dismantled them. Every movement was calculated, every strike efficient. He used the terrain to his advantage, disappearing behind hay bales, reappearing from blind spots, striking with the kind of speed and accuracy only years of Black Ops missions could forge. Guns were useless in their hands because he was already inside their defenses before they could aim. One by one, they dropped, disarmed, incapacitated, humiliated. But this was only the beginning. John knew they'd come back, and they wouldn't come alone. Cartels never take a loss without answering it with more blood. That night, John prepared. He reinforced his barn doors, dug defensive positions, and set traps around the perimeter. He also made a call, not to the police, who were often too slow or too corrupt to handle cartels, but to men whose names were never written in any public record. They were his brothers from Delta, men who owed him their lives and who would drop everything when he called. 2 days later, under the cover of darkness, a convoy of black SUVs rolled onto his property. Out stepped 6 men, each one a ghost from John's past. Former Delta operators, Green Berets, and SEALs who had fought alongside him in the dirtiest corners of the world. Their presence was silent, but their eyes told the story. They were ready for war. The cartel's retaliation came at 3 a.m., a wave of headlights cutting through the night as a dozen trucks roared down the road. They came armed with assault rifles, grenades, and enough arrogance to believe they could take whatever they wanted. What they didn't know was that they were walking into a trap designed by some of the deadliest soldiers alive. The fight was over in minutes. The traps John had set funneled them into kill zones where his men picked them off with surgical precision. The ground shook with controlled detonations, and the air was filled with sharp commands and the sound of men who had fought too many wars to lose this one. By the time the sun rose, the survivors were on their knees, hands tied, their weapons in a pile far out of reach. John stood over them, the dawn painting the sky in blood-red streaks. He knelt in front of the cartel lieutenant, a young man who had worn his power like a crown until tonight. "You tell your bosses," John said, his voice low and cold, "if they ever come back here, they won't be leaving at all." The message was received. In the weeks that followed, the cartel vanished from the area. Farmers and ranchers began to rebuild, no longer afraid to tend their land. John never bragged about what happened. He just went back to his quiet life, planting his crops and tending his cattle. But those who knew, knew. And as for the cartel, they now had a name they whispered like a curse. John Reyes, the ghost of Delta Force, the man who turned a farm into a fortress and sent them running back across the border. Because some men are farmers by choice, but warriors by destiny. So, my friends, if you believe courage isn't about the size of your army but the strength of your will, drop a comment below and tell me what you think of John's stand. And if you want more stories of bravery, grit, and heart, subscribe to my channel. Be kind always. Together, let's keep these stories alive.